So you've shopped around and you finally settled on a particular digital signage system and you think you have everything all together. And hey, turned out you chose Visix. Yay, lucky us, lucky you. It's all going to be great. But now we have to get your system up and running. You need a smooth and quick system launch. And that is where implementation comes in. It's a whole thing. And I don't really know anything about it because that's not my job. My job is this. Fortunately, I'm talking to someone who knows a lot more about this than I do. It's not his job either, but he is a software support specialist for Visix, and his name is Phil Epple. Hi, Phil. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey, Derek. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to thank Phil, of course, for coming on, and everybody out there for listening to this episode of Digital Signage Done Right. Don't forget you can subscribe and review and share and all that jazz, and you can follow along with a transcript on the Visix website, which will also have some helpful links. Whether you're using digital signage or not, our podcast gives you practical tips for communications and content to better engage your audience. I'm Derek DeWitt. Welcome to Digital Signage Done Right. So, Phil, the whole goal, obviously, is to get the clients to have really good-looking content and everything running smoothly just on day one. We don't want to start them off with just like a couple of messages and then, we'll figure it out over the next couple of weeks. That's not our goal at all. We want them to have a fully functioning system that does pretty much what they want it to do immediately.
Of course. That's always the goal for any client that comes on board. We like to get that product running as soon as possible so that they can see basically what they've purchased and all of its capabilities, hopefully on day one.
So we've got, obviously, the software. We need to configure things, media players, master accounts, things like this. If there's data mapping involved, we got to get into that action. Maybe they want certain kinds of layouts and branding, and we help with all of these things.
We sure do. Our pro services team are amazing at creating content, in-depth data mapping, quite complex content if you'd like it, as well as we can assist with even simplistic content if that's something you'd like to have us do.
Now, the first thing I've been told is that really, before anything else, before we even start thinking about any particulars when it comes to the digital signage, we got to get the right people, right? Who are the right people? Are we talking about the people who are going to be using the system or what?
Oh, that's 100%. Having the right people, Derek, let me tell you. So the right people, especially for your implementation, are generally going to be your IT folks, and not just your level ones, but your network administrators and your system administrators. They should be involved, especially during implementation, to ensure that everything within the network can communicate, access to the server where the software is being installed, or maybe you're choosing to go the hosted route and just ensuring that where these devices go on the network can reach out to the internet to reach the hosted server.
Ah, okay. So it is the IT people, because, digital signage, we've mentioned this many times on this podcast. Digital signage is an odd thing because very often IT is who shops for it, and then they hand it off to somebody else and say, okay, you're in charge, bye. So this is actually still an IT project at this point because we're dealing with networking and hardware and software and networks and all this stuff.
Oh, 100%. And in fact, just to bring up the point, something that we see quite often is the project is handed to the AV department and not the IT. And I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what digital signage in the modern world is, which is really more IT based. A lot of this is running on Windows computer systems, Windows servers, running over IP-based networks.
All right, so that's the right people. And then we got to make sure that we have all our ducks in a row. One of my favorite phrases. I don't know where it came from. I don't know who was landing up ducks or for what purpose, but we got to get them in that row. To that end, we have this implementation checklist that we send people ahead of time.
That is correct. We actually have two different checklists that each client, as they begin this process, can kind of go off of. We have their onboarding checklist, which is the general scope of everything that's going to take place over the course of implementation. And part of that checklist is the actual IT checklist or IT readiness checklist. We have this in two different flavors. We have this for the hosted clients as well as the on-prem clients. There's not too many differences between the two other than a on-prem client. Of course, will have some additional steps in regards to their server. If they want to use SSL certificates to have that ready to go for time of implementation, just to streamline that process.
So you send this to them, and then they always do all the things that they are being asked to do in advance so that when they finally get on the phone or a Teams chat or whatever with the implementation specialist, then it's all ready to go. That's how it always works, right?
In a perfect world, yes. But unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that way. And if you were to ask my opinion, it probably does come down to having the right people involved from the get-go of the project. Sometimes we'll receive these checklists back with some basic information that, of course, does help with that implementation, but missing key components, which could delay that implementation if we need to get, say, the network admin involved, who happens to be on vacation the one time of year they get to do it.
Right, right. Okay, well, we need to talk to Joe. Oh, Joe's not here. This is not like buying a new laptop where you just, pull it out of the box, plug it in, and it kind of takes you through the paces, and you're up and running and looking at cat videos in an hour. It's a bit more involved than that.
That's correct. It's not a convoluted setup or anything too extreme, but like anything in the modern business world, it is going to require a little understanding of network, IP-based communications, and Windows systems, primarily just how to get Windows systems up and running. And then, of course, with our administrators, there are other things they can choose to do. As an example, adding a PC player to their domain if they wish to control that Windows device through their domain. But otherwise, it's not super complex. It just requires the right people at the right time.
Right, right. So, walk me through the general shape of this pre-implementation checklist.
Yeah, so basically, once we kind of start off with the kickoff calls, a lot of that's going to be identifying who is in charge of what or who, has access to what. So that's kind of the bringing together of the right folks, right? And so then the next step there is going to be more or less a technical call. We call that the IT readiness. Prior to that, the CSMs have sent a link to our forum, which is our IT readiness checklist, the same thing we've been kind of discussing. For the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to ask for some questions specific to the software. And pretty much this is the one that we always get filled out, or at least the parts we always get filled out. What do you want to call the organization? What do you want to call the suborgs? Various in software configurations. But a little bit down the way, you will notice that we're asking questions about the IP-based network. We're asking questions about the SSL cert. If you want to use that, that's completely optional. But if you do, it is something you want to have set up ahead of time. But for the most part, this checklist will be filled out. It'll be sent back into us, and we'll schedule an IT readiness call where we'll then go over all of these items, kind of relay what we've received back, ensure that that is meeting the needs of your network and the needs of how you would like to see this deployed.
So, how many steps are there all told, really, before we start doing stuff, before we start monkeying under the hood?
So basically, we identify this in a total of about 8 steps before the installation is happening. But to be fair, it's broken into 2 phases, and phase 2 includes the installation and implementation of the software. So while we say 8 steps, 4 of those steps are identifying who is going to be involved, from the content creators to the systems administrators. So ideally, we're really looking at more of a phase process than a step process, and that implementation does begin in phase 2.
Well, that sounds pretty easy. What are some of the issues that come up though in that? Let's say you think everything's all settled. You've done phase 1, those first 4 steps. All right, we're ready to go. Phase 2, here we go. Wednesday, 5 o'clock. Yeah, and it doesn't happen. Why doesn't it happen?
Well, I would say if I were to pick out, let's just say maybe 3 most common causes. One of the most common causes is the PC players, again, Windows-based computers at the end of the day, are connected to the network and are not provided an internet access. They have an internal network access, but no internet access. Possibly a content filter, VLAN, security design, what have you. Very normal things we see in modern networks. However, the PC players especially in a hosted environment, have to reach out to a server in the cloud. So they need an internet connection. But most of Signage also will include widgets and configurations that reach out to third-party data sources or sources out on the cloud. And so they also would need internet access for that. So that's probably one of our most common issues. The idea to secure the players goes a little farther than it should, and they don't have internet access. Another common thing that we will see will be especially in SAML authentication. And so for our viewers, SAML authentication is also known as SSO or single sign-on. This is a wonderful authentication method, very easy to maintain. The problem here is that Visix does not maintain access to your deployment. Even when it is hosted, you are in full control of access to that deployment. So during implementation, especially, we have to have a deployment administrator, and that deployment administrator should be attending pretty much all of the calls involving implementation because it will be their account that needs to be used to sign in to complete that implementation. Things like adding the additional users, adding additional administrators, everything that's needed will start with that deployment administrator account. And then one that we see not as often, but sometimes it does happen, is the use of the SSL cert. If you choose to not put the PC player on your domain, it would require that, of course, you are installing that cert on the player as the way, part of the way Windows works. And so keeping that in mind and being prepared with that cert, which we're happy to work with you to get installed as we implement, just having that prepared ahead of time is a good thing and it shouldn't delay.
So you've got all this organized, and then bam, it just happens, and it happens flawlessly. Or do we sometimes run into hiccups during that final step in phase two?
Oh, I would say that is very, very rare. That if all the stars have aligned and all the information is there, generally the solution can slide right into your network and just begin operating. As mentioned before, it's Windows based. And so most networks are also Windows based. And so this is just kind of an extension of that network running on these PC players, showing your digital signage. It can be implemented extremely quick and painless as long as the stars align.
Right. I know that sometimes when we have government clients, especially because they have layers and layers and layers of security and protocols and all this, and let's be honest, sometimes some of their equipment is a bit outdated as well because, it's government. And so I know that can sometimes cause a little bit of a headache and kind of run into a whole bunch of little weird issues.
Very much so. But, we think about our government-based clients as well. And so we have actually developed what we call the government edition of Signage Suite. And so this version actually removes some of the internet access requirements, enabling their PC players and their main server to not need to talk to any endpoints if they don't desire it to. And so when we do get a new client on board, that is one question we ask. Are you a government-based network or do you have a need for a government-based install? And this is what it entails. So we do assume with a government deployment that the managed system and the players will not have internet access. And that also is something that we understand within support. If you reach out to us as a government client, we have your account noted. We understand we may not be able to get on that player to help you, but we will be there on the phone to walk you through whatever is needed to get that issue resolved.
And I understand our support team is really just a crack team. We get an astonishing, I'm going to toot our own horn here, but we get an astonishing number of praising statements from clients about our support.
Oh yeah, 100%. Not to toot our own horn, of course, but no, we do. I would say that we probably get about 2 to 3, maybe praises a week from our various clients, and they range from full software meltdown to just a simple how do I get content on the screen? Sometimes it could be as simple as that. It could be a 5-minute phone call. We're always happy to help, no matter what the problem.
And we've recently added functionality for bright sign players as well. Are there any differences when dealing with that? Because they have their own sort of Android-based OS.
Oh yeah, they are very different.
Ah,
Not in a bad way, but they are definitely different. They are kind of designed to be, what's the best way to say this? They are less modular to harden their operating performance, if that makes sense. And so while with a engaged PC player, it runs on Windows, and sometimes that's not ideal for every client, of course. But with Windows, it does open up the realm of possibilities in what you can do with your signage. Now, BrightSign is extremely popular. But their model is based on less function, but more dependability. So they are less likely to have random issues because they are not running Windows. They are not requiring updates at all times like Windows is needing. So, it really boils down to what makes most sense for you. I think ideally, most clients will have a combination of the two types of players. They will have their BrightSign for just their basic signage, and they will use their Engage for where they want a little more elaborate, in-depth, high-functioning signage.
Right. And when you say our players use Windows, we're not talking Vista or Windows 10 or Windows 11 here. It's a pretty robust Windows.
Oh, 100%, 100%. In fact, while it is a version of Windows 10 or 11, of course, now all new players are Windows 11, it is not the base standard stream of that operating system. We use specifically an IoT LTSC version. And the reason we go this route is that they are locked into their feature. This ensures that the feature version or a feature update does not cause a conflict with our software. Now, there's a common misconception between security updates and feature updates. So I'd like to just touch on that a little bit. Security updates are the things we need to have. These are the patches that fix the exploits within the operating system that could allow a actor or intruder into the network to gain control and cause havoc. Feature updates are more things like Cortana or adding in Copilot. And these aren't things that we necessarily need for signage. So we choose to use this version to ensure that they don't release a new version of Copilot that magically doesn't work with our software. But it's important to know that this version continues to get security updates. And in fact, something that a lot of our clients are learning right now that have bought players from us within the last, say, 5 years, the pending Windows 10 end of life is coming here in October. And so we're receiving a lot of feedback from clients about what do we do? We've got all these players on Windows 10. Well, the good news is, yes, it's Windows 10. IoT LTSC, which in fact is supported till 2032 for security patches. So there's no need to rush out there and replace these players at the moment or the operating system on them. You're actually good for probably longer than that little device is going to live. We all like to think that these things will last forever, but if you can get 5 years out of any computer, I think you're probably doing pretty good. I know one of the pain points for clients in the past was updating all of those players after you update the server. And, when we introduced turnkey updates about a year ago now, I really think that that was the kind of the transition to making this whole thing just even easier to manage, where with turnkey, you can update your server and your players will check in and they'll update themselves automatically.
Boy, you can't get better than that, right?
No, no, the more you can automate, I think the better everybody's lives are. I mean, that's what technology is there for, right?
So the whole goal of the implementation process is to get you up and running quickly so that your stuff looks fantastic and professional right off the bat, as we say, on day one. In order to achieve that in the fastest possible time, which is how I think most of us measure efficiency, we have a two-phase process. 4 steps in phase 1, which is mainly making sure that we're talking to the right people and that we can get all the right people together in the same virtual space so that we can have the conversations we need to have. And then the second phase, which ends with actually installing and you being able to use the software. Bam, just like that, when it's all over. If you follow the steps in these 2 phases, and don't monkey about, it will happen all pretty quickly. Even if you're a more complicated client, such as, for example, government clients who often have a lot of extra things that they have to deal with. But nothing stays still. And so we're constantly moving forward, improving things. As you said, we've just added turnkey hardware updates recently, which is a huge time saver. So there's a time saver right there. There's technology actually saving people time, which is great. And who knows what the future will bring. But the important thing is to, when you get that implementation checklist, read it, understand it, and follow it, please. So I'd like to thank my guest today for talking to me about all of this, which, as I said, I really didn't know very much about at all. He is Phil Epple, and he is a software support specialist for Visix. Thanks for talking to me, Phil. The stuff just rolls right out. Bam! You say it, and then it's understandable, and we're done. No monkeying about. I like it.
100%, 100%. And Derek, thank you for having me today. This was a lot of fun.
And again, thank you everybody out there for listening. I remind you again that there is a transcript on the Visix website under resources and podcasts. And don't forget, use that checklist to get all your ducks in a row. Quack. For more free stuff, head to resources on Visix.com for guides, videos, and more to help with your visual communications. Please subscribe and share, and contact us for information about our digital signage solutions.